Today's case is classified as one of the most terrifying cases in the history of Germany, and the reason is that the crime took place on March 31, 1922, and the investigation into it continued until the year 2007, meaning the investigation continued for 85 years. Why was the matter delayed for so long, or rather, what is the matter that happened? As I told you at the beginning, on March 31, 1922, in the German city of Bavaria, 5 people from a family called the Gruber family and the maid who worked for them were killed inside their farm, and their bodies were found in the farm barn. In order to understand how the crime happened, we must go back to Laura. It's 6 months. During this period, the maid who worked with the family in the house or on the farm she would always hear strange noises. She would hear the sounds of clicking on the doors or the sounds of whispering, so she would tell the people of the house about the sounds, but they would not believe her, and they would tell her that she was delusional and there was nothing, no sounds, no whispering, no something. But the girl was sure of this thing and heard voices, and for this reason, and out of her fear of this matter, she left her job and went away. The situation remained normal with the family during that time, and one day before the crime, the Gruber family brought a new maid to work for them, and unfortunately this was the first and last day she would ask me why. Because on the same day that the new maid came, the family began to notice the things that the old maid was talking about, meaning they began to hear the voices that were talking about them, and not only that, there were many strange things that happened in the house on the same day. The father saw a newspaper in the house that he did not know, had not subscribed to, and had not bought it before, neither he nor anyone else in the house. They also lost a pendant containing the keys to the doors of the farm. They had a special room for tools in which they put everything they could possibly need, from an axe for chopping wood or drilling and drilling equipment. If you compare things to what I am going to say, you will discover that they are nothing normal. Maybe you can come back and tell me again why. The weather was snowy at that time and the entire ground was snowing, so they saw the footprints of a person coming from the side of the forest close to them and entering the inside of the house. The problem is that there are no traces of return in the traces of his entry, but there are no traces of return, meaning the person who entered inside the house did not go outside. Andreas, who is the father of the family, was very surprised by the matter and went to his neighbor's name, Lawrence. Everything had happened to him since the old maid was in the house, and Lawrence offered to take weapons to protect himself more, but he refused and said there was no need to make the matter more serious than that. On the night of this day, unfortunately, the killer who was in the house pulled the family members one by one into the barn and killed them with an axe. The entire family was in the barn, except for a small 2-year-old child and the new maid who came, and they were killed in their rooms. Unfortunately, the police or people in general did not discover the crime until April 4, that is, 4 or 5 days later. The reason, according to what the residents of the area said, was that they did not notice anything strange on the farm. The chimneys were working and smoke was coming out of them. The animals had food and were eating, and everything was normal on the farm, even if he was a courier. The mail came and they received mail one day after the incident, and nothing happened. The guard dog was there. Nothing had changed. 4 days after the incident, a person came who had agreed with the family to fix the generator they had for them. He came and knocked on the door, but no one would open the door for him. The first thing that surprised me about the situation was that they agreed with him and gave him an appointment on this day, so they had to be present, but when no one opened it, he decided. He repairs the machine alone because the machine is already located outside the house. He does not need to go inside the house or even have someone come and explain something about the machine to him. Because, as I said, they had been talking to each other before, and he knew everything and agreed with them that he would come to repair. After he repaired the machine, he saw a dog tied to the door of the house. The dog was not there when he first came. When he saw the dog, he said, "Surely, there was someone inside the house." He came back and knocked on the door. No one answered him. So he decided to go to their neighbor, Lawrence, because he was the closest neighbor to them, and told the story. No, the dog was paralyzed inside and suddenly he was outside. He asked him to tell them when he saw them that he came and fixed the machine. After the scientist left, Lawrence went to the Gober farm to check on them and tell them the story of the reformer. As soon as he arrived at the farm, he knocked on the door for them and no one opened. He walked a little and saw the barn door open, and when he entered it, he saw the bodies of 4 people from the family. He entered the house to see if anyone was in the house or no. The strange thing is that there were traces of people actually in the house. There was a working fire and dishes in the kitchen and traces of someone who was eating, but there was no one in the house, nothing but the corpses of the family. He left the farm and informed the police. When the police arrived and analyzed the bodies, they discovered that the people had been dead since March 31st. The police began conducting investigations, asking people and searching, but they were unable to find out anything. The most suspicious person was their neighbor Lawrence, and this was for several reasons. The first reason was that he was the person. Whoever reported the crime and saw them, why shouldn't he be the one who committed the crime and then report it so that the accusation can be removed from him? The second reason is that he is the closest person to them in the area. The closest person in terms of distance. The third thing is that Lawrence once asked for the hand of his daughter, Andreas, and he refused. It is possible that this thing motivated him as a form of revenge, for example, but after that they were not able to prove the accusation against him, and the reason was what I mentioned a while ago, which was that there was a person living in the house who was working on the fire and feeding the animals, and at the same time, Lawrence was in his house. And he had witnesses stating that he was in his house and did not come out during that period, so they were not able to prove the charge against him, and the investigation continued until 2007 to no avail, and there was no person against whom the charge could be proven. The only witness to this serial killer is a 2-year-old girl. In the year 1985, Mike Rimmer, who was 36 years old and lived in Tacoma, Washington, had his main job in construction, and in the winter, Mike would always go to a forest in which the famous Nisqually River was located and hunt animals, and Mike had been hunting animals for more than 15 years in the same forest where he went. Every time, he was the guardian of all the places in the forest, so he would go to a far place where there were no people, because if there were people walking the animal, it would be afraid and not approach the traps. He planned everything and was very professional in what he did. Mike was married to a girl named Diana, who was 21 years old, and they had a 2-year-old daughter named Crystal. To be honest, she is not his wife, she is a girlfriend, but I am ashamed to tell you that they are leaving behind a son without getting married, but that is not important, this is not our topic. Mike and Diana's relationship was not very good. Even one day, Mike broke into Diana's house and beat her, except that Mike kept carrying a gun with him. After this incident, Diana filed a restraining order against Mike, and according to my understanding, according to the case, Mike is forbidden from seeing his daughter or communicating with her, and despite all the problems, they both love their daughter, and they will give her anything she needs, regardless of all the problems between them. I want you to stay until the end of the video because the end of the story will give you the shock of a lifetime. In December of the same year, meaning 1985, Mike and Diana reconciled and the lawsuit was filed against him and they went back to living together and life was beautiful. One day they decided to go on a camping trip in the forest where Mike always hunted because it was far from people and quiet and he preserved it and knew how to do many activities in it. So they gathered their belongings and got into their car, which was a red pickup truck, and went on a family camping trip with Mike, Diana, and their daughter, Crystal. Mike went to the place where he always set traps to catch animals, and they set up a tent in a place close to it. Also keep in mind that this is the spot, it is in the middle of the forest and there is no way to walk there, meaning no people come to this place. Well, you will tell me why they went there, in short, because Mike is used to it. He is in this place and knows the area and its guardian. On the same day, after a short period of time, people saw a young girl standing near a store called Kmart. This store is about 32 kilometers away from the place where Mike and his family were. Of course, until now, they are wondering who the girl is. The girl is Crystal, Mike's daughter, when the workers saw her at the Kmart store, they were shocked by her behavior because she looked very afraid and all the time while she was walking, she looked around as if she knew that someone was going to come behind her and hit her or something. The workers tried to ask her, "What is your name, girl?" Where are your parents? Your mother or father, anyone? Unfortunately, the girl did not answer any questions. At that time, the worker was forced to leave her with him and call the police. When the police came, they asked her the same questions, and she did not answer. So they took her to a place specialized in child care, and published her picture in the newspaper and wrote, "If anyone knows who the girl is, call this number." 2 days after the advertisement, the girl's grandmother saw the advertisement, and was shocked because she knew that it was impossible for Mike and Diana to let their daughter get lost or do anything that would harm her, no matter what problems they had. It was impossible for this thing to happen, so before she called the number in the advertisement, she called Mike, and when he did not answer the call, she called Diana. She also wanted to, and at that moment the grandmother knew that there was a disaster in the text, so she called the number and told them that I am her grandmother. Where is the girl? What is the story? The police gave the grandmother the address of the center where they had put the girl, and she went there. Thank God, the girl recognized her grandmother and was happy when she saw her and started talking. It is natural that the first question the grandmother asks is, "Where are your family? Where is your mother or father?" Crystal responded to her with one sentence, "Mommy is in the trees." The answer is not very clear, and the girl is only 2 years old and does not know how to speak, so this sentence was the most she could say, and every time the grandmother tried to ask her more questions, Crystal would repeat the same sentence, "Mommy is in the trees." At that moment, the police arrived at the station and the grandmother asked where the girl's family was and where they had seen her. She told us that we had no information because the girl was not talking and we only saw her at Kmart. Thank God, the grandmother turned out to be a little smart and told the police that the girl was saying, "Mommy is in the trees," and I know that it is Mike. He likes to camp in the forest, so they may be present inside the forest. Grandma gave the address of Mike's house to the police so they could begin the search. When they went to the house, the lights were off, there were no sounds, and no one was in the house. So what the police did was to fly a plane over the forest to look for any sign that might indicate the presence of people or the presence of camping, because often people who are camping light up fire and fire. The plane flew over the forest and they sent search patrols inside the forest and distributed patrols around the forest. All in vain. The operation continued for 2 or 3 days without benefit. They saw no sign, no evidence, or anything to help them investigate, so they decided to stop the search operations and wait until they had more information about the case. 2 months later, there was a person walking with his dog in the same area where Mike and Diana disappeared, and this person saw a red pickup truck that was covered in snow. The situation was a little strange because on the day this person saw the car, he was not getting into the snow, and it was clear that the car had been there for a long time. The snow on it is old and frozen because no one is moving or using the car. This person approached the car and tried to wipe the snow and see ashby in the car, and the first thing he saw was blood. Not on the driver's seat, on the seat next to him, it was all blood. The first time he saw the sight, this man was terrified and quickly ran away and called the police and reported the car. When they arrived at Chatra, they saw the car and knew it was Mike's car. They quickly began searching around the area where the car was, hoping to find any evidence for the case. In fact, they did not see any evidence, but they saw Diana's body stabbed 17 times and with a hood wrapped around her neck. Since they saw Diana, they expected that they would see Mike, so they started looking around Diana in the area where she was, but they did not see anything. They opened the car to make sure that there was no one in her heart, and they saw a paper with the words, "I love you Diana," written on it, and it was handwritten. When they showed the picture to the family, they assured them that this is Mike's handwriting. He always sent them text messages by mail, because it was 1985, and they memorized the shape of his handwriting. After people saw the writing and saw Diana's body, everyone started saying that Mike was the perpetrator. Why? Because the letter was in his handwriting, and he disappeared without a trace, and all the events that happened people began to associate that Mike was the perpetrator, but in reality the story is completely different. I will briefly tell you about an incident that happened 4 months before the time Mike and Diana disappeared, because this is a story whose events we must focus on. On August 10, 1985, a person named Stephen was on a camping trip. He and his girlfriend were in the same area where Mike and Diana disappeared. They were even very close to the place where Mike was hunting. During their trip, they were attacked by a strange man and killed. The police quickly saw Stephen's body. Because it was in its place, it had not moved, and it was in the heart of the tent they were sleeping in. I mean, Stephen killed him while he was sleeping. As for his friend, the search took months for her, and when they found her body, a scarf of the same brand was wrapped around her neck that was on Diana's neck, and the story grew and everyone started saying that Mike was the uncle. He kills people because he is the only person in the area. The police had a different opinion, and they were denying that Mike was really the criminal because the first thing they had was no conclusive proof that it was really Mike's handwriting, and the second thing was that there was no motive. They said that he might have attacked Diana because there were problems between them, and this thing doesn't make sense at all, but let's assume he was the one who actually did this thing. Why would he kill Stephen and his girlfriend? What is the reason? At the same time, the police were not able to write a warrant to arrest Mike because they did not know if he was alive or not, because if he was not alive, he was certainly not the person who killed people, but despite that, at that time, because of the way the story went, what people said was that Mike is the one who is being killed, and the last thing he killed was his wife and escaped. The story started to get somewhat forgotten. People started insisting that Mike was the criminal and they got drunk over the matter, but after 26 years, meaning in the year 2011, there was a person walking in the forest where the crime took place and he saw a piece of a person's skull, so he called the police. The police came and searched the area again and saw a second part of the story. The skull, but they could not find the complete skull or other organs. After analyzing and investigating it, it became clear that it was Mike's skull. They were unable to know the manner in which he died, because they only had one bone from his skull, but they were able to know the date of the death of the owner of the skull, and they estimated that at the same time that Dina died, meaning in short, Mike turned out to be innocent, and the criminal turned out to be a serial killer who would not kill. Other than the cables, it means one and the other together, and the bag he was putting on the victim's body is his mark, but unfortunately there is no information about the killer at all, and they don't even know if he is still alive and killing people or not. And here we have reached the end of the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe.